What's up, everybody? Derek Hudnall here, and we're about to go to episode 2 of Bourbon and Bass. And I appreciate everybody that reached out last week. And in our first introductory episode, but we're going to go on to episode number 2, guys. And I have some really cool stuff to talk about here. Again, my name's Derek Hudnall. I fish on the Bass Master Elite Series, but this kind of shows you guys who I am and more about what I love. I love to bass fish, and I love to collect different bourbons, ones that have really cool stories, really cool bottles. Much more of a collector than I am an actual drinker, but I love the stories behind it. I love the history behind it. And I love the way it looks on my shelf. So this week's bourbon issue is going to be Booker's. Super cool bottle, super cool stories. Guys, this is a small batch bourbon collection, and they're all named different things based on certain stories. This one that I have is actually called Beatin Biscuits, and each one of these, they wanted a special story behind each one of them that kind of tells a story of how they created it. And this one here, Booker's is actually made in the Jim Beam Distillery in Kentucky. And actually, the family wanted a good story behind it, and Booker No, who was the original guy that produced it, and it's actually his son now that runs it. So his son actually came up with a story. He called it Beatin Biscuits because his dad had these little biscuits that he made, and he talked about how he was so meticulous and how it had to be absolutely perfect. These biscuits had to be the perfect amount of air. They got into the biscuits at certain times, and he talked about just how meticulous it could actually be. So this one, Beatin Biscuits, super cool story. I could sit here for 20 minutes and tell you about the story behind it. This is cask strength. It's like 126 proof. I mean, this stuff is very, very strong. And to be honest with you, this isn't one of my favorites among the bourbons that I like to sip occasionally. But it's a super cool bottle, super cool story, guys. So if you're looking for one, good for the shelf, good stories, this is the one for you. I'm actually not going to have a drink with you guys tonight because tomorrow morning I'm actually doing a trip, and I'll never mix the two anywhere close together. But guys, super cool bottle, super cool collection. You get these just under $100. If you're looking for one to add to your collections that really looks cool and you can tell a story behind it, the Booker's is really cool. So guys, check that out. If you're a bourbon collector and you want to get on collection, the Booker's got some really cool stories behind it. And so the second part of this is the knot tying, guys. This is one of the most controversial issues amongst. You see the TV shows, guys, of people testing knots and what knots are the strongest and which ones hold up and all of that. Guys, I'm going to tell you something. I have been tying one knot on 99% of my lures since I was old enough to tie knots. My dad told me the uni knot when I was, as he likes to say, knee-high to a grasshopper. And that knot is something that I've tied ever since. Guys, I tie it on everything. The only reason I will not tie a uni knot is if I get 8-pound fluorocarbon or below, I'll actually tie a San Diego jam knot. That is the only reason, guys. And I don't care what anybody tells you or what you think you know, the knot does not fail. Number one rule of knot, guys, if you break your line, it doesn't mean you're not gave. If you get your line in and it's got little curls on it, then yes, your knot gave away. But there's a lot of different things that can go over to line breakage, especially on a hook set on a fish. And I hear the story all the time. I'll never tie that knot again because I set the hook on 3 fish in a row and my line broke. And when in fact it probably is not the actual knot. There's something else that played into it. But guys, I've been tying this knot for 35 plus years, and I tie it on braid. I try it on fluorocarbon, and if this knot is tied properly, it is one of the oldest, easiest to tie, and most effective knots out there, bar none, period. Number one rule of knot tying, guys, if you have a knot that you're comfortable tying, easy to tie, and you have confidence in it, don't change. I'm not showing you this simply to try to change the knot that you're tying. But if you're not real confident in your knots, if you're not real confident in the knot that you're tying, it's super hard to try, and you're trying to find something that's quick and effective and it's easy. The uni knot is something that when you tie it right, and it's very easy to tie, it can be very effective, and it does not fail. I'm telling you, I can count on one hand how many times this knot has failed in my life. 35 plus years. The knot doesn't fail. You tie it right. But there is a certain part of this uni knot that you need to pay attention to that I think some people miss out on. And I'm gonna show it to you right now, just the basic uni knot. Now I have this on braid so you guys can kind of see this. Now, the first rule when I'm tying it on braid, once I put it through the eye, and I have this thing on a Spro bronze eye frog right here, it goes through the knot. Now braid, I will actually run it through the eye twice. And I'm not going to run it through the eye twice by showing you this, simply because I want you guys to really see how this knot works. It cinches down a little bit differently twice, but braid, I tie it twice. So simple uni knot, and I hope you guys can see this, is basically around, you can run it through the eye, go around it 5 times. 2, 3, 4, 5. And everybody knows, and most of you know a uni knot, and once you do the 5, you can see the little loop it creates. You just simply put the tag into that little loop that it created. If I can get it in there. Hang on. If I could just turn it correctly. Now, here's the part. And everybody says, oh, it makes a loop at the top and I just run it back through it. Now, most lines, guys, when you start to cinch it, do you see how it naturally wraps itself a couple of times? And it creates that eye at the top? Make sure that it naturally does that. If it does not, move your finger around it to make sure it naturally wraps itself around there before you put this tag end back through that top eye, which is exactly what I'm doing here. Hold on, guys. But make sure it naturally does that before you run it back through that top eye. If you just run it through that loop, guys, I really think it loses strength. Make sure when you start to pull it tight, it naturally wraps itself around that eye a couple of times before you run it tight. Now, another big thing, and maybe not necessarily on braid, but especially fluorocarbon, before you cinch this thing down, make sure it is lubricated, guys. If you tie this knot dry, you're gonna burn the fluorocarbon, which will damage it. And I'm telling you, that will weaken your line and that'll cause your line to break. Any cinch knot, any knot out there, make sure you lubricate it. And especially if you guys like to put the bead stoppers on there when you're flipping, I do the same thing. Make sure it's lubricated before you slide it, because if you try to slide it dry, it's gonna burn it and it's gonna weaken that knot. So guys, that is the uni knot. Make sure you pay attention whenever you run that line back through that top eye, that when you kind of start cinching it down a little bit, and you saw in the video how it kind of naturally, that eye wrapped itself around a couple of times before you put it through it. And guys, I'm telling you, this knot does not fail. I don't care what anybody tells you, it doesn't fail if you tie it right. 5 times around, loop at the bottom, start cinching it a little bit and let that eye wrap itself around a few times, back through the top eye, make sure it's lubricated, and pull it tight. It's a cinch knot, guys. Simple knot. I tie this on everything, guys. Like I said, the only thing I don't is 8-pound fluorocarbon or smaller. I'll tie a San Diego jam knot. And of course, not on a drop shot or anything like that you tie that polymer knot with. But any of my baits, guys, I'll tie it down to 15-pound fluorocarbon if I'm throwing a wacky worm in, 6 inches of water in dirty water. I'll tie it 10-pound fluorocarbon on a jerk bait. I'll tie it anything, guys. The knot does not fail. But that is a simple, easy knot to tie. It's been around for 862 years. It was the knot that I was taught when I was a kid, and it does not fail. But again, I'm not trying to get you guys to tie a different knot, but if you're looking for a knot that is simple and easy to tie, this is one you need to go to. Super easy, super simple. You can tie it extremely quick, and most importantly, it does not fail. Uni knot, guys. If you're looking for one, try that out. But I appreciate you guys watching. We talked about Booker's, beatin biscuits, the uni knot. Ask any questions that you want to. Next week episode, we're going to talk about some new prototype stuff that's coming out. ICAST has been canceled, guys, so there's a lot on the books right now and products that came out this year that I want to talk about with you guys. And then we're going to talk about a really cool one. Jefferson Ocean's cast strength. Really cool story behind this, guys. Aged at sea, and every batch is different because it's aged at sea. Depending on the weather, hurricanes and stuff like that creates different tastes. Really cool story behind this. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Any suggestions that you guys may have that you want me to talk about, please send them on YouTube, IGTV, wherever you're watching this at. And guys, tight lines on the water. I got a trip tomorrow. We're going to go try to put a smack down on tomorrow. So everybody, drink responsibly if you do, and especially be responsible on the water. Guys, thanks for watching in. Talk to you guys later.